Everyone, welcome back to my Python tutorial. In this lesson we're going to look at databases in Python. This is not a database tutorial, but we're going to get an overview of databases and how to access them from within Python. So databases are very popular backends for web servers and business applications, so we're going to need to know how to do this as Python programmers. Database is a collection of data that's accessed with a structured query language or SQL. That's the internal language to get to the data. The common database types that are out there are the big enterprise databases such as Oracle and Microsoft SQL. And then you have open source like Postgres and MySQL, and then you have SQLite, which is essentially a database library that works well in websites. So we're going to use MySQL, which is a pretty robust database management system, and any of the commands that we use here to access data in MySQL can be ported easily across the other databases I mentioned and much more. So just a reminder, if you like these videos or get any value from them, please don't forget to subscribe, and let's get busy accessing databases. So there are two things we need to do to get MySQL up and running on your computer. The first thing is to download the actual software, MySQL software. And the second thing we need to do is import the MySQL libraries into PyCharm. So we go to Downloads to get the software. We'll select the Community Edition. And then we'll select MySQL Community Server. We'll hit download on that, and we'll select I'm running a Mac on this particular machine, so we'll download that. Click download, and that'll download to our computer. We can skip the login and just download the file directly. We can double click on the file once we download it and run the installation. It'll take us through a series of steps. You can click the defaults on most of these. Pretty straightforward. Prompt you for a password on your machine to make changes. Select the legacy password encryption. We're not concerned too much with encryption. Put a password in for the root. Put something in. It doesn't have to be terribly complicated, but remember what you put in here because we'll need it to access the databases. This is just a local install, so security and encryption is not paramount at this point. Keep in mind if you share this code in github.com that you'd want to keep something pretty generic here, or better again, not include the password in the code. Now we've installed MySQL Server and we're ready to access it from Python in PyCharm. I recommend that you go back to the downloads page under the community MySQL Server and download MySQL Workbench. This is a graphical utility that will allow you to access the database on your computer and configure it. So it's highly recommended you get this. I won't walk through the install, it's pretty straightforward. If you want to manage the MySQL database server, you can go into MySQL in Settings on your Mac. On a PC, you would go into the Services in the control panel. There are some slight differences when installing MySQL on a PC. For example, you may need to install Microsoft Visual C++ as part of the installation. Best to let the installation handle this and it'll install it for you. You can select a development server, standalone development, that's fine. And again, you would pick the legacy authentication, similar to what we did on the Mac, and you put in the password for the root account or the main account here. Keep it something simple that you can remember, and standard system account is fine. You hit next, and the rest is similar to the Mac. And finally, you can go into services if you want to turn the services on and off for MySQL. Now that we have MySQL Server installed on your host machine, we need to install the library in PyCharm. So we're back here in PyCharm. And to do that, it's similar to what we've done before. We open up in terminal and it's MySQL client. That's the library that we'll install to run MySQL queries. So I've already installed it, but yours should install some quick things here and we're good to go. So now the first thing we do is we import the MySQL DB. That imports the library. Then we have a pointer or a variable, we'll call it DB, into MySQL DB connect. This is the connector to the database, and it's localhost, but if it was on a machine somewhere else, we would put an IP address or a host name here, and the username we're logging in at is root, and the password is password. Now obviously this is very lax security, and we're running on a local host. We're not putting anything really important in here, but as that changes, these will have to change also. A cursor is an abstract pointer to point to the DB instance, and what it does is it allows you to use multiple instances of the DB. You don't have to get too much into it, but this is the term is used in Python, and this is what we're going to use. And then this points it to the DB here, and now we're going to execute that cursor with a command for our database. First thing we want to do is create a database, and the way we're going to do that is type the create database command. Now the create database is a SQL, a structured query language, is a database term. So basically in Python we're just connecting to the database and we're submitting a SQL statement to create a database. This is not Python code here. So if we run this, we get no response back, which is good. And now we should be able to see a test database. So if we look at our database, I have it here at the command prompt. You simply type show databases, and we do. You can also look at it in a SQL Workbench, which is what I advise you to download during the installation. It's a relatively simple tool. It has a lot of bells and whistles that, unless you're going to be a database manager, you don't need to get into. But what it does have is it has the test here, and you can see the tables, and it's also very helpful to add users to a database. It's a little cryptic to do it at the command prompt, but to do it here is easier. But for now, it shows that we have a database test, and we have nothing in this except the database. So we're going to change that now. So back in PyCharm, we're going to add some tables to our new database. So I've updated the connector. I've put the database that we're going to connect to. This is an addition from the last time. It's the same credentials. The cursor is the same, and we're going to create a variable, SQL tables, and we're going to add all the SQL commands to this variable. They're all in the text format. So these again are SQL commands, not Python commands. And then we're going to send this to execute it and send it to our database. So once we run this, we should have a set of tables. This incidentally is a fake company that I set up. It's a car dealership. It does not exist in anywhere, but let's use it to create some tables on our database. So let me run this. And we didn't get any response back, and I take that to be good. So let's go to the command prompt and access our new database. And then show tables. And now you can see we have the tables that were listed in our SQL commands. You can also look at this in Workbench. If you go to our test database and expand the tables, now you see the tables that we just created. So now let's add some information into one of these tables to see how that looks like. So in PyCharm, I've created another SQL entry here, this time to insert into the salesperson table. That's one of the tables we created in the last command, and we're going to insert a salesperson name. This format is SQL format, but to us it really doesn't matter as Python programmers. We're just inserting the commands into a variable. So this is all the same, and if we run this, there's only one difference here, and that's the commit. So databases roll back in commit. That's how they protect the integrity of the database. So we're going to send a command to insert data into tables, and then at the end of it we're going to commit the command, which means to post it into the tables. So let's run this. Again, no feedback is good. So now we can go to our terminal to verify that the updates were made. The SQL command to query a database is select all from table name. And as you can see, the entry comes up. We can now check it in Workbench. And as you can see, there is the entry that we just put in to the salesperson. So to retrieve data, we're going to run a select statement in SQL to pull the data from a table, the one that we populated. So to do that, we use the same connector with the same credentials, but use the cursor execute, and we'll use a select from all from salesperson. That's the table we populated. The results then will come into the fetch all command, which is the cursor attribute that takes all the information, puts it into that variable, and then we'll scroll through the variable with a for statement and show the results of what we found. And as you can see, we have 3 entries in the salesperson data, 3 lists essentially. And these are like any list in Python. We could parse these or do anything we want, compare them once they're in list format. So once we get to this point, the rest of it is all Python code. And that's the purpose of this video, to just introduce you to how to access the database and how to retrieve information. You would clearly need to know more SQL commands to do more with this database, but this is an introduction to help you connect and retrieve data. I'll put this code on my website at pythonforadultsandkids.com and share it out on github.com. In the future, we'll be doing a lot more work with SQL in our lessons. So if you like these videos and get some value, please don't forget to share and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.